In this episode, we start with the documents that turn security from a good intention into something you can actually repeat. A security policy may say that systems must be protected, accounts must be controlled, and sensitive data must be handled carefully. But that does not tell you exactly what secure looks like on a normal workday. Standards and procedures fill that gap. They give you clearer rules, expected settings, accepted methods, and repeatable actions that people can follow without guessing. When you are new to cybersecurity, this topic may sound like paperwork, but it is really about consistency. If every team protects systems in a different way, the organization becomes uneven and fragile. If everyone follows common baselines, password rules, physical security expectations, encryption practices, standard operating procedure documents, and runbooks, security becomes easier to measure, audit, improve, and defend. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at CyberAuthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A useful place to begin is the difference between policy, standard, procedure, and guidance, because these words often appear together. A policy is broad and usually comes from leadership. It says what the organization expects and why the expectation matters. A standard is more specific because it defines the minimum acceptable way something must be done. A procedure explains the steps someone follows to complete a task in a consistent way. Guidance is usually less mandatory, and it helps people make good choices when every situation is not exactly the same. You can picture a policy saying that access must be protected, a standard saying passwords must meet certain requirements, and a procedure explaining how an account is created, reviewed, disabled, or recovered. These document types work together so that security does not depend on memory, personal preference, or whoever happens to be on shift that day. Standards matter because they turn broad ideas into measurable expectations. Without a standard, secure can mean different things to different people, and that creates weak spots. One administrator might think a server is secure because it has updates installed, while another might also expect unnecessary services to be removed, logging to be enabled, and default accounts to be disabled. A standard removes much of that confusion by defining the required condition. Standards may apply to operating systems, cloud accounts, mobile devices, network equipment, encryption, passwords, physical access, or many other areas. They do not have to explain every small action, but they should make the expected outcome clear. For the Security Plus SY0801 exam, pay attention to the purpose of standards. They are not just documents for compliance binders. They help an organization apply security consistently across people, systems, locations, and business processes. Baselines are closely related to standards, but they usually describe a known secure starting point. A baseline tells you what normal or approved should look like before a system is used in production. For a laptop, a baseline might include approved security software, screen lock settings, encryption, logging, update settings, and restrictions on unnecessary features. For a server, it might include hardened configuration settings, limited administrative access, service settings, monitoring, and backup expectations. The value of a baseline is that it reduces variation. If every device begins from the same secure foundation, it is easier to spot drift later. Drift happens when a system slowly moves away from the approved state because of changes, exceptions, troubleshooting, or neglect. A baseline also gives security teams a reference point when they review systems. Instead of asking whether something seems safe, they can compare it against the approved baseline. Password standards are one of the easiest examples to recognize because almost everyone has dealt with passwords. A password standard explains what the organization expects for account protection. It may cover length, complexity, reuse, password managers, lockout behavior, account recovery, and when multi-factor authentication, MFA, is required. Older password rules often focus too heavily on frequent changes and awkward character patterns. Modern security thinking usually cares more about long, hard-to-guess passwords, protection against reuse, and extra verification for sensitive access. A good password standard should also consider people. If the rules are so frustrating that users write passwords on sticky notes or reuse the same password everywhere, the standard may create new risk. You do not need to memorize every possible password rule for this topic. Focus on why the standard exists, which is to make account protection consistent, enforceable, and aligned with the sensitivity of the account. Physical security standards remind you that cybersecurity is not only about screens, networks, and software. A system can have strong technical controls and still be at risk if someone can walk into a server room, remove a device, plug in unauthorized equipment, or view sensitive information left on a desk. Physical standards define expectations for areas, devices, badges, locks, visitors, cameras, secure disposal, workspaces, and environmental controls. They may describe who can enter a restricted area, how visitors are escorted, how equipment is stored, or how printed sensitive information is protected. The point is not to make every building feel like a fortress. The point is to match physical protection to the value and sensitivity of what is being protected. A public lobby, an employee work area, a wiring closet, and a data center should not all have the same level of access. Physical standards help the organization make those differences clear. Request for comments, RFC. Documents are another type of standard-related material you should recognize. RFC documents are published technical documents that describe many of the protocols, formats, and behaviors used across the internet and networking world. Some RFC documents become widely accepted standards, while others provide information, experiments, or historical context. You do not need to read every RFC document to understand the exam objective. What matters is that they help create shared technical expectations. When different vendors build products that communicate over networks, they need common rules so those products can work together. RFC guidance can describe how a protocol behaves, what a message format looks like, or how systems should interpret certain fields. In daily security work, you may not quote RFC documents often, but the technologies you rely on are shaped by them. Encryption standards define how data should be protected when it is stored or transmitted. Encryption can sound mysterious at first, but the basic goal is straightforward. It makes data unreadable to someone who does not have the proper key or authorization to decrypt it. An encryption standard might say what algorithms are approved, what key lengths are acceptable, how keys are protected, and when encryption must be used. You may hear about Advanced Encryption Standard, AES, for protecting stored data, Transport Layer Security, TLS, for protecting data in transit, and Public Key Infrastructure, PKI, for managing trust through certificates and keys. These details can get deep quickly, but the governance idea is simple. An organization should not let every team choose its own encryption method randomly. Approved standards reduce weak choices, outdated methods, and inconsistent protection. A standard operating procedure, SOP, document is more action-focused than a standard. A standard might say that privileged access must be reviewed regularly, while an SOP explains how the review is performed. It may describe who starts the review, what records are checked, how exceptions are documented, and who approves the result. A good SOP should be clear enough that a trained person can follow it without inventing the process from scratch. It does not have to turn people into robots, but it should reduce confusion during routine work. SOP documents are useful for onboarding, quality control, audits, and continuity when someone is absent. They also help keep security from becoming tribal knowledge. Tribal knowledge is information that lives in people's heads instead of in a reliable process. When security depends only on one experienced person remembering how things work, the organization has a fragile process. Runbooks are similar to procedures, but they are often used for operational situations that require a known response. A runbook gives a team a repeatable path for handling a specific event, task, or condition. For example, there might be a runbook for responding to a malware alert, investigating a failed backup, handling a suspicious login, or restoring a service after an outage. A runbook often includes decision points, escalation contacts, checks to perform, and expected outcomes. The value is especially clear during stressful situations. When something breaks or an alert looks serious, people may feel pressure to act quickly. A runbook helps them slow down enough to follow a trusted process. It also helps different responders produce similar results. The runbook does not replace judgment, but it gives judgment a safer path to follow when time matters and mistakes could make the situation worse. These documents work best when they connect to each other instead of living as separate files nobody uses. Imagine a company has a policy saying sensitive data must be protected. That policy connects to an encryption standard that says what protection is acceptable. It connects to a baseline that says laptops must have storage encryption enabled before they are issued. It connects to a password standard that protects the accounts that access the data. It connects to a physical security standard that protects areas where sensitive records are handled. It connects to an SOP that explains how a new laptop is prepared and assigned. It may also connect to a runbook that explains what to do if a laptop is lost. When these pieces align, the organization gets a chain of repeatable action. The policy sets direction, and the supporting documents turn that direction into behavior. One common misunderstanding is thinking that more documents automatically mean better security. A large stack of policies, standards, and procedures can still fail if the documents are outdated, unclear, ignored, or impossible to follow. Good security documentation should be accurate, usable, and connected to real work. If a password standard says one thing, the identity system enforces something else, and the help desk follows a third process, the organization has confusion instead of control. Another misunderstanding is thinking that documentation is only for auditors. Audits are one reason documents matter, but the bigger reason is dependable operation. You want people to know what good looks like before there is a crisis, and you want evidence that important tasks were performed consistently. Ownership and review are part of making documents trustworthy. A password standard written years ago may not reflect current account security practices, and a runbook may need improvement after a real incident reveals missing steps. Exceptions also need control. Sometimes a system cannot meet a baseline immediately, but the exception should be documented, approved, time-limited when possible, and tracked so it does not become a permanent hidden risk. From an exam perspective, focus on recognizing what each document is meant to do. If you see a question about minimum approved settings, think about standards and baselines. If the question describes a repeatable task with defined actions, think about an SOP. If the question describes an operational response to a known condition or incident, a runbook may be the better fit. If the question points to Internet protocol behavior or technical specifications used broadly across vendors, RFC documents may be involved. If the question asks how an organization chooses approved cryptographic methods, think about encryption standards. You are not being asked to become a lawyer, auditor, facilities manager, and engineer all at once. You are learning how governance turns into repeatable security behavior. That connection matters because organizations do not stay secure through good intentions alone. They stay secure by making good decisions repeatable. The main idea to carry forward is that security documentation should help people do the right thing the same way every time. Standards define required expectations. Baselines define approved starting points. Password standards protect accounts in a consistent way. Physical security standards protect spaces, equipment, and information outside the purely digital world. RFC documents support shared technical behavior across the technologies that networks depend on. Encryption standards reduce weak or random choices when protecting data. SOP documents explain how routine security work is performed. Runbooks guide response when a known event or condition occurs. When you see these terms on the Security Plus SY0801 exam, do not treat them as isolated vocabulary. Connect each one to its job. Broad policy gives direction, but these supporting documents make security visible, repeatable, testable, and easier to improve.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.